All right, guys, Flexible here. Strength through Length Thursday. I want to talk about a topic that is discussed a lot, especially in like the team sport, kind of explosive sport field, and that is flexibility not being equal to hypermobility. So I kind of want to talk about the difference between the two, so that way you understand exactly what it is we're talking about when we're talking about flexibility, and what hypermobility actually is, because a lot of coaches who don't understand the difference between the two simply basically tell you that they're the same thing, and they're not the same thing. So first, let's talk about what flexibility is. Now, there's a lot of different definitions for flexibility, but I want to use a definition that I have found that I think is actually one of the best definitions for flexibility, okay? And that is movement achieved by taking a joint into a predetermined end range position, okay? So anytime that I'm taking a joint into its end range, we would basically look at that and say, okay, that is that individual's flexibility, all right? Now, flexibility is moderated almost purely by your nervous system, okay? So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Hypermobility is movement of a joint beyond what are normal limits as a direct result of connective tissue laxity, okay? And so what is connective tissue? Connective tissue is your tendons and ligaments that help stabilize the joint, and they're non-contractile structures, meaning you cannot personally contract those structures, okay? So let's talk a little bit about this first. So flexibility, all right? How do we know that flexibility is moderated almost 100% by nervous system, okay? So first, there are very small percentage of people who are gonna have limitations on their flexibility due to soft tissue structures, maybe because they've had surgery, maybe because of genetics or something like that, but it's very few people. I would say probably 100% of the people that are watching this video, it's not gonna pertain to them whatsoever, okay? So a study that was done at university in Germany. If you want more info on this study, just message me, send me a DM or in WhatsApp, and I can give it to you. But there was a study done in Germany, and they basically were trying to figure out exactly what would happen to the body put under anesthesia, okay, in terms of flexibility. And what they found is that when your body is put under anesthesia, which means your nervous system is essentially turned off, okay, your body is not limited in its range of motion. So they were able to put people in perfect splits, full splits. Their bodies had full range of motion, okay? When they came out from underneath anesthesia, of course, they returned back to whatever range of motion they had prior to the anesthesia. So we know that if we turn your nervous system off, you have perfect flexibility. There are no limitations in the structure whatsoever. So we know that flexibility is determined almost 100% by your nervous system input, okay? Hypermobility, when we're talking about the connective tissue, your tendons and ligaments, there's only two ways that you can become hypermobile, all right? One is through injury. So that's something we experience all the time, right? When we roll an ankle, our soft tissue fails, therefore the ligaments take the brunt of the force, which can stretch the ligaments or the tendons, and therefore can make the joint unstable and hypermobile. The other is genetic, okay? So there are predisposed genetic qualities that you can inherit from your parents or grandparents or whoever, that can make your connective tissue be a little more lax than the normal. And again, that's one of those things that you would know, and it also requires a pretty thorough diagnosis. So again, you would know if you have hypermobile joints. And most people that have super hypermobile joints are in a field at which it might prove an advantage to them, right? So, maybe very high level contortion or circus, or maybe some gymnastics or something like that. But it is actually very rare to have any disorder, and I believe there's actually 2 clinical diagnoses for the kind of connective tissue, genetic you can have. So basically, the other thing I want to talk about too is how we know they're not one and the same, the funny part is actually quite the opposite. So if your body perceives any hypermobility of the connective tissue, your flexibility actually decreases. The reason it decreases is because the soft tissue, the brain senses, some instability, so it will actually lock down the nerves and the soft tissue to protect the joint because it now senses it's unstable. So if you're riding your bike and you fall off your bike and you separate your AC joint and you realize, oh man, you lose range of motion in your shoulder. The reason that is because all the soft tissues around your shoulder have literally locked down almost like a corset to protect your shoulder. So actually the opposite happens. So if you're hypermobile, you actually will find that you might have limited flexibility. Think of any time you get injured, say you injure your hamstring flexibility decreases. Why? Because the hamstring's locked down to protect the tendons and the ligaments. So actually quite the opposite occurs. If hypermobility does occur at the joint, you tend to lose flexibility. Now it doesn't mean that, if you do have something that happens, you can't become flexible, or the opposite way around. You absolutely can. You just have to understand that basically draw a big line between the two of these things, because for the most part, they are not one and the same. They operate on completely different systems. One is almost primarily nervous system based, the other is completely soft tissue and genetic based, which can only occur with pretty severe injury or based on your genetics. So I just wanted to clear that up quickly for people, so the next time somebody tells you you can touch your toes, that you're hypermobile, it's just, there's no basis for which that statement stands, and to be honest, it's bro science. Whoever's telling you that just simply doesn't understand clinically the difference between what flexibility is and what hypermobility is, and even how they operate. And science does show, again, people keep telling me studies and their coaches say that this study and that study. I've been Googling. I have yet to find a study that says that these are even the same thing, or believe it or not, science is really on our side here. Science actually shows that flexibility is a good thing. Science shows that flexibility is nervous system based. You can't increase the flexibility of your connective tissue by stretching. You just simply cannot produce enough force to make changes to the soft tissue. I mean, we're talking about tens of thousands of pounds of torque that are needed to create any sort of either damage or hypermobility of the connective tissue. And that's just the bottom line, is if you're stretching and you're doing this, you're just not producing enough force to create changes to your connective tissue. So that's the difference between flexibility and hypermobility. I tried to keep it as short as I could. If you have any questions, send me a message. I can send you the studies and the links and a couple of the podcasts that I've listened to that talk about these things, to kind of, if you want more information on that. So thanks, guys.